Well, we're in part 3 of Staying in Love, and today I want to help resolve a little mystery for those of you who have been in love, want to be in love, are in love, have ever thought about it being in love. The question we've asked is it possible for two people to fall in love and stay in love forever together? And even if I told you, no, it's not possible for two people to fall in love and stay together forever, even if I said it's not possible, you would try it anyway. Even if I could prove to you it's not possible, in your heart and in my heart, we think it is possible, and we think we are all candidates. We think somewhere out there somewhere is one special person, and if I can find that person and we fall in love there, surely it's possible, regardless of my past, my baggage, and what I've seen around me and what culture tells me, surely there is a way for me to fall in love and stay in love together forever. Now, it would be that simple. It would simply be as simple as I'm going to put you first and you're going to put me first and we'll put each other first, and as long as we're putting each other first, we'll just be in love and passionate and hold hands and giggle and be like, 16-year-olds our whole life. That would be possible if we came into the relationship with a heart that was very, very full and a heart that was very, very healthy. If we both came into, and if you and your partner, or you and your spouse or fiance came into the relationship and there had been nothing but awesome, amazing, wonderful relationships in your past, your dad was at every game, your mom was at every recital, they held hands and giggled and they just poured into you, and there were a few bumps along the way, but at the end you love mom and dad, and and your best friends always poured into you, and all your past relationships, nobody ever abused you or took advantage of you or mistreated you. Life was you were just full of joy and acceptance and affirmation. And if you came into the relationship and your heart was just so full of good things and your spouse's heart was just so full of good things, then all you'd have to do is just put each other first, and you could stay in love. But couples don't normally come to romantic relationships with that kind of past. In fact, we call it baggage, don't we? That we've all been dinged up a bit. That your dad didn't come to all your games. In fact, he didn't even come home sometimes, right? And your mom, she had her issues and she was kind of trying to overcome something from her past. You never put all that together, and there was some drugs and there was alcohol in some cases, and there was abuse in some cases, and there were money issues in some cases, and there was just stuff. And you had that younger brother, and he got all the attention because he had so many problems, and you were like the golden child, but they ignored you because they had to take care of brother, and you kind of left with some rejection. And we could just sit here and all get in a big pity party. But the point is, we come into romantic relationships and our heart isn't always in great shape. In fact, there is stuff in us as a result of previous relationships, just as a result of life and culture, and we bring that stuff into the relationship. Now, I want to try to illustrate for you exactly what that looks like, and to do that, I have a couple of friends here. This is Mr. and Mrs. Mugg, okay? So say, hey, this is Mr. Mugg, and hey, this is Mrs. Mugg. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Mugg. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Mugg met right after college, and like many people, when they, he saw her and said, I got, and she's like, woo, and he had a degree and a future, and she was, look at her. I mean, she's a knockout, so that's working for her. And so they started dating, and when they first started dating and hanging out, they were so careful. Because he's trying to win her heart and she's trying to win his affection, and they were just so careful. And they had a few little problems along the way, and there were a couple of bumps in the relationship, but they were just so careful, and everything was going to be great. And then they got married. And then about a month into their marriage, they had a problem. They had a bump. And stuff came out. And he looked at her and said, whoa, where did all that come from? And she looked at him and said, well, I didn't know you had anger issues. And he said, well, I didn't have anger issues till you bumped me. Oh, there it is again. And then they had another problem, and they just were so, and she went to see her sister, and she said, I didn't know he was like that. And we don't know where guys go. They don't go anywhere, He looked in the mirror, perhaps. I don't know. And he sat around thinking, wow, she makes me so mad. She makes me so mad. Whenever she brings that up, I just get mad. And if she would quit bumping me like that, then I wouldn't be so mad. My wife, she has issues. And so he says to her, when we were dating, I didn't see all this. Where's all that coming from? She says, well, every time we get in an argument, you make me act that way. Now, It's been entertaining so far, even if you haven't learned anything, right? Now, here's what I want you to see. Mr. Mugg thinks the reason the blue beads come out of him is because they keep having conflicts and she keeps bumping him. And Mrs. Mugg thinks the pink beads keep coming out of her because he keeps, they keep having problems and he keeps bumping her. But here's the truth. The reason blue beads come out of Mr. Mugg is because that's what's in there. And the reason the pink beads come out of, you writing this down? The reason the pink beads come out of Mrs. Mugg is because that's what's in there. And this is important. All of us have stuff in us. And you don't know what's in you until you get bumped. And most of us don't get our first real big, hard, gut-wrenching bump until we get into a romantic relationship that we're committed to. And there's something about romance, and there's something about the permanence of I'm committed to you and you're committed to me and we're living together, moving in together, or married together. There's something about that brings out the best and it brings out the worst. And most people don't know really what's going on in there until they get into a relationship they're committed to and they say, you're the one for me and I'm the one for you. Oh my goodness, what in the world was all of that? And this is why people who make the ultimate commitment to each other end up madder at each other than anyone else on the planet. So here's the question, what do we do? And the answer is pretty simple, but it's something that most of us don't do. We have to learn to pay attention to what's going on inside of us. We have to learn to pay attention to what's going on inside of us. Here's how the writer of Proverbs said. If you want to look at this, we're going to just look at one verse. Jesus reiterates the same thing in Matthew 15. In fact, Jesus says the exact same thing. He just gives some more illustrations, but we're going to look from just this one verse in Proverbs 4:23. Here's what he says, Proverbs 4:23. The writer of Proverbs, the wisest guy in the world, right? Knows everything, said a lot of stuff, wrote Proverbs, wrote Ecclesiastes, wrote Song of Solomon, had a lot to say. Here's what he says. He says, above all else, which means what I'm about to tell you is as important or more important than anything I've ever said before, and that's a mouthful coming from Solomon. What I'm about to say is as important or maybe more important than anything else I'm going to tell you. And if you've read the book of Proverbs, he talks about money and relationships and kings and working and work ethic and all kinds of stuff. And Song of Solomon's all about sex. And, Ecclesiastes is all about when you get old, how life seems kind of futile and what's the point? I mean, he's kind of covered the gamut. And he says, above all else, the one thing I would say, if you're just going to get one thing, is this. Above all else, guard your heart. Guard your heart. Which means pay attention to what's going on the inside. The heart in that culture represented the seat of emotion. This is where the emotions come from. And the writer of Proverbs, Solomon, says, I want you to guard, which means pay attention. Guard, which means keep the bad guys out. Guard, which means protect what's valuable. I want you to guard your heart. I want you to pay attention to your heart. I want you to protect and defend your heart. Now, let me tell you what we're real good at. We're not very good at guarding our heart, but we're really good at monitoring our partner's behavior, right? We're not very good at monitoring our heart. If you ask me, Andy, what does it look like to monitor? If I were to say, what does it look like to monitor your heart? I'd probably get as many different answers as there are people listening. But if I were to say, what does it look like to monitor your partner or your spouse's or your fiance's behavior? You'd say, now I know how to monitor behavior, and that's what we do. We're really good at looking at what they do, don't do, say, and don't say, and pointing out the things they should do, shouldn't do, should say, and shouldn't say. We're great at monitoring behavior. We're horrible at monitoring our heart. Now, both are really, really important. But let me tell you how they're connected. Let me see if I can explain this. You see, in your relationship with the person you love the most, you want to feel a certain way. All of us do. You want to feel loved. You want to feel pretty. You want to feel competent. You want to feel respected. You want to feel cherished. You want to feel valued. You want to feel taken care of. You've never made a list, and that's okay. But you want to feel certain things. And your husband or wife or partner or fiance, whatever the relationship is, their words and their actions elicit certain feelings in you. And when you try to get them to stop doing something or start doing something, oftentimes, even though we don't make the connection, it's because we don't like the way those words or actions make us feel. We want them to do and say things that make us feel a certain way, because after all, we were drawn into this relationship primarily because of emotion. We fell in love. We love the way they made us feel. We love the security they offered. We love the sense of, hey, who's that you're with? And, whatever all that stuff was, we loved all of that. We were drawn in a lot because of the emotion that this person created for us. And it is normal for us to want to keep that emotion alive. And so we monitor their behavior, trying to get them to do and stop doing certain things, say things, stop saying things, because we don't like the way those things make us feel, or we like the way certain things make us feel. We want that emotion, that adrenaline, that passion, and that sense of I'm who I think I am, and we love all that. And that's absolutely normal. The problem is we depend, this is why these relationships are so difficult, we come to depend in a huge way on our spouse or on our partner to create those feelings for us. I'm dependent on you to make me feel confident. I'm competent. I'm dependent on you to make me feel valued and cherished and lovable. I'm depending on you to make me feel these things. All of that goes on behind the scenes in any love relationship, and that's absolutely normal. And if we all came in with only good stuff on the inside of us, that would probably work out kind of by itself. But it doesn't, because we come into the relationships with all kinds of stuff on the inside of us. And what's on the inside eventually makes its way to the outside. And when stuff comes out of us that we don't like, our tendency is to blame the person that brought it out of us, but it was in us to begin with. Now, here's the part that I think your experience will bear witness to, but it's nothing I can prove to you in the time we have today. And the point is simply this, that your ability to feel certain things, is determined by the condition of your heart. Your ability to even feel on an ongoing basis the things you want to feel are in some ways impacted by the condition of your heart. That if you've come out of a home where you just never ever felt appreciated, it's going to be harder for you to feel and sustain a level of appreciation with your husband or your wife. And no matter what he or she does, there may always be a sense of, it's just never enough, it's never enough. Your ability to feel certain things is a reflection not only of your spouse's behavior, but the condition of your heart, which means your ability, follow me, your ability to stay in love, has as much to do with the condition of your heart as it does the behavior of your partner or your spouse. That even your ability, no matter who you were with, your ability to maintain that sense of, wow, you fill me up, and wow, you make me feel, your ability to stay in love has as much to do with the condition of your heart as it does the behavior of your partner. And both are vitally important to the relationship, but we naturally monitor their behavior. We do not naturally monitor our heart. And when the blue beads come out and we don't like what comes out of us, we'd say, well, if you would quit saying and doing that, these beads wouldn't come out. But the truth is, you brought some of that with you into the relationship. And without understanding what we're talking about today, no amount of commitment can compensate for this dynamic. You may stay together. You may decide we're against divorce and we're never ever getting divorced, and we just put, as we said last week, duct tape down the middle of the room, in the bedroom, in the bed, and the upstairs, and we're going to cohabitate, but by golly, or you may say this just isn't worth it. I just hate the way he makes me feel. I hate the way she makes me feel. And their behavior is part of it, but the condition of your heart is part of it as well. Listen to how Solomon ends this verse. He says, again, above all else, guard your heart. And listen to the last part. For everything you do in your relationship, everything you do romantically, everything you do during the course of your day, everything you do flows from it. That is, when you're in a relationship with another person, your relationship is the overflow of your heart. Jesus, again, he says the very same thing. He says all kinds of things come out into our actions, and they all come from our heart. That we are defiled by what's in our heart, not simply by what we do. That everything you do is the overflow of your heart. So if your heart isn't in good shape, it's going to be almost impossible to maintain healthy relationships. But here's the bottom line. What's in you is going to come out of you regardless of who's with you. What's in you is eventually going to come out of you regardless of who's with you. You can interchange the pieces and interchange the names and faces, but eventually what's in you is going to come out. So it's so important for us, those of us who want to stay in love, to learn to pay attention to or to monitor our hearts. So let me tell you how this goes. There's kind of two parts to this. You've heard it said before, think before you speak, right? Think before you speak, think before you speak. Here's what I want you to begin doing. There's two parts to this exercise. The first part is to stop and think about what you're feeling before you speak. To stop and think about what you're feeling before you speak. Now, guys, let me just say something to you. I know how this works for us. We say, well, I'm just frustrated. What are you feeling? Frustrated. What else? That's just it, frustrated. Then we say, well, I'm not angry. Well, and then sometimes we say, okay, I'm angry, but I'm mostly frustrated and sometimes I'm angry. And it's like, guys, is that your only two emotions? Pretty much. That's sort of where I live. I'm happy. I got all the happy ones. But in terms of negative emotions, what are your negative emotions? Frustrated and sometimes angry. And that's it. That's as deep as we go. So guys, I want to work with you a little bit today, okay? This is a little bit easier for ladies. And we say it's because they're more emotionally intuitive. It's not because they're more emotional. In fact, guys, I would argue we're so emotional and we're so scared of our emotions that I'm just sort of frustrated. I'm going to go see my friends and kind of get, work through it. I just need a moment. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to increase your vocabulary. Here are some other emotions that you may have. Okay. Here are some other emotions. And here's my point in this exercise. Listen carefully. This is so important. The goal is to identify exactly what we're feeling. And this is sort of a journey into our heart. And you say, well, Andy, is that healthy? Yeah. Solomon says you need to guard or pay attention to your heart. Here's just a few things that you have felt before. And I'm telling you, there's extraordinary power in what I'm about to share with you, okay, in this exercise. But the first thing is to name your emotion and name exactly what you're feeling. You and your spouse, you and your partner have a bump, there's some conflict, and all of a sudden here comes the volcano, and it's a pause, and it's a, what exactly did she make me feel? What emotion, what specific emotion did that surface in me? Here's a bunch of them. Anger, because we all know that one. Left out. I think I just feel left out. Embarrassed. I'm mad at you, but I know you're mad, but why? I think I'm just embarrassed. That's a good one. Unappreciated ladies, you get so mad at him, sometimes, and you just say, I'm just mad. He just frustrates me to death. But what's behind that? I think I just don't feel appreciated. Ugly. You feel ugly? Unlovable. When you say that, it just makes me feel like I'm unlovable. I feel like a failure. Every time you start talking about my brother-in-law and all the trips they were able to take and all the things they were able to do, and I know you're just proud of my brother-in-law or your brother-in-law, but every time you start talking about his accomplishments, I just find myself getting angry. And you don't think I like him, and it's not that I don't like him, it's just that when we talk about him, when he shows up, there's something that comes up on the inside of me. What is that? I think you feel like a failure. I think you feel like you haven't accomplished much. You need to surface that and hang on to it, and I'll tell you what to do with it in just a second. Old. I feel stupid. I feel lonely. I feel abandoned. I just feel like you've abandoned me. I'm scared. I hate to admit it. I thought I was just frustrated, but the truth is, I think I'm scared. I feel out of control. I feel betrayed. I feel like you've betrayed me. I feel picked on. I think what it is whenever we get into these arguments, I just feel picked on. Well, to be honest, I think I'm jealous. Now, jealousy is really hard to see in the mirror. Really hard for us to admit. I think I'm jealous. I think when your sister comes around and she wears those clothes and I can't wear those clothes, and it's not that I don't like your sister. I know you don't think I like your sister, but I think as I've come to realize it, I know I'm critical of all these different things about your sister, but I think I think I'm just jealous. Disrespected? What is it? In other words, what is it? I mean, I know there's, things are flying all over the place, but to surface it and to say, I know this is kind of weird and different for me, okay, what exactly, this is guarding your heart. This is paying attention to your internal life. What exactly am I feeling? I'm not just going to say I'm mad. I'm not going to start talking. I don't want to have another argument. This has come up, and while it's up, I want to identify it, and I'm going to name it. I finally figured it out. I feel insecure. Whew, I finally figured this out. I finally named it. And here's what I want you to do when you identify it. I want you to say it out loud. I want you to say it out loud. I want you to say, just to yourself at first, I feel jealous. That's what I feel. I feel like a failure. That's what it is. When he comes around or when I hear them talking and telling those stories, I feel like a failure. See, now you're getting somewhere. Now you are beginning to discover and pinpoint what is already in you. Let me tell you what. Emotions like this that stay buried, and the only thing you can say is I'm frustrated and I'm mad, and I don't like it when you do that. As long as they're a secret, listen to me, they are powerful. They are powerful, 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 powerful. They drive you. They drive what you say. They drive what you don't say. They send you into a funk and you can't talk to anybody and you clam up and you kind of go into your cave, or they drive you to say things you wish you'd never said. They're powerful. But you start unearthing them and you start out loud naming them and saying what it is. I'm telling you, they begin, this isn't the end, they begin to lose their power. And I'll tell you what else happens. When you begin naming them and then you begin looking, and you realize, you know what? The reason my wife talks about her brother, it's not that she's trying to make me feel something bad. It's just she just loves her brother. I think this is a me issue. This is an Andy bead. This is a Billy bead. This is a you bead. This has nothing to do with her. And I've just felt, this anger, frustration every time this comes up, and I've just put, you know what? I think I got to own this one. I think I might even owe her an apology. Now, why is it that his success makes me feel like such a failure? I need to figure that out. And here's what you'll discover. Oftentimes, much of what you feel is stuff you brought into the relationship. It has nothing to do with your husband or your wife or your boyfriend or girlfriend or your fiance. Their words and actions just surface something that was already there. And I'm telling you, there's huge freedom when you begin to discern between what they said and what you feel. It's powerful. But as long as it is a secret, it will run your life and potentially drive a deeper and deeper wedge between the person that you committed to love for the rest of your life. So you got to name it. It's jealousy. You got to say it out loud. I feel jealous. I feel lonely. I feel left out. And see, here's the thing. There's part of you, and guys, I'm speaking as a guy because that's all I know. Guys, it's hard for us to say it out loud. And part of it is, it's going to lose its power. Guys, one of the ladies as well, the reason we don't want to say it out loud, listen, is because we also lose our excuse. Because I kind of want to stay mad. I want to kind of stay upset. I want to use my anger or my pouting to control your behavior. But now that I realize what I'm dealing with, I kind of lose my excuse. And then the next thing you do with this, you name it, you say it out loud, and sometimes when it's appropriate, you tell your partner. And here's how that conversation goes. Mr. Mugg says to Mrs. Mugg, Mrs. Mugg, I've discovered that whenever you say those things you say to me when you find out I'm going to come home late from work, I just got to tell you, I just feel so unappreciated. I'm just telling you that when you say what you say, I'm just telling you what I feel. I feel unappreciated. Now listen. There are no bad feelings, okay? There are no bad feelings. They're just feelings. So when someone you love says to you, when you do this or when you say this, it makes me feel a certain way, That's not a criticism of you. That's just an observation. And if that makes you get all defensive and all insecure, well, you shouldn't, that's a pink bead problem. When Mr. Bluebead says, when you do certain things, it makes me feel a certain way, that's just information. And when somebody opens up to you in that way, do you know what the proper response is? The proper response is, I'm so glad you told me. And then here's the most important part. Let's just all practice that. That's the hardest part for us, isn't it? You don't say anything else. I'm so glad you told me. I'm so glad you've been willing to figure it out, and I'm so glad you've been willing to share it with me. I'm so glad you told me. Not, well, you shouldn't feel that way. Or here's another one. I'm sorry you feel that way. It's thanks for telling, I'm so glad you told me. Because listen to me. Healthy people, this is a mirror for you. Healthy people, when they discover that something they do or say elicits negative emotion in their partner, elicits hurt in their, causes hurt or surfaces hurt, when they discover that, healthy people quit doing it. They don't say, well, you'll just have to deal with it. They don't say, well, you should grow up. You should be more mature. They quit doing it. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to start paying attention to your heart. That's how you stay in love. I know you're going to pay attention to his or her behavior. You got that down. I want to challenge you this week to start paying attention to your heart and asking this question. What exactly am I feeling? And then I want you to say it out loud. And then I want you to look at what you said out loud, and then I want you to look at what they did to elicit that, and then you're going to say, you know what, I think maybe this isn't a marriage problem. I think maybe this isn't a relationship problem. I think this is a heart problem. God, help me overcome